what do you expect to see if the Labour Party is able to form a government at the next election? Do you expect to see more paternalism, or will there be more community focus and engagement, and allowing them to run with it?
I'd like to think that there's the potential for more communitarian thinking in the Labour Party under Sir Keir Starmer. But the reality is much of the party continues to be in thrall to racial identity politics. And I think there's still, in my view, there's a lack of focus on factors such as family structure and community culture when looking at racial and ethnic disparities. Now, Labour has this big idea of introducing a new Race Equality Act. Heaven knows why that this is their big idea. Because as I said, I think Britain has made significant progress when it comes to racial equality. Now, improvements can be made. Of course, I think in policing, I think there's certain communities which are not particularly trusting of the police. We should work more in terms of building, or rather rebuilding, those police community relations. I also talk about in the book, John, about name-based discrimination in the labour market, where you have these CV-based experiments where you have resumes with very similar levels of academic achievement, work experience and skill sets. But English-sounding names tend to fare better than culturally distant names. So there's definitely progress to be made when it comes to that. I've argued for the wider rollout of name-blind application processes across a variety of sectors in the UK. But I think that what the real issue that we have in the UK, in my opinion, is family breakdown, family instability. So I think that what we really need is some sort of family security act where there's a political commitment to looking at various problems in British society, whether it's employment or housing, looking at that through a family-oriented lens. So, for example, I'm very supportive of the idea of more family-friendly protections for British parents who are in work. I think that, in the wider European context, I think we fare quite poorly when it comes to parental rights, especially surrounding parental leave when a newborn arrives. And I don't think that's right at all. So I would have liked to have gone more in that direction. How do we best support communities who are most at risk of family breakdown? Now, I think this is something I touched upon in the book, that I don't think we're going to see significant improvements in terms of youth development in Black Caribbean heritage communities until we really get to grips with cultural issues surrounding fatherlessness. So I'll just give you some statistics here. 2019 Office of National Statistics, when you look at children aged up to the age of 16, I believe, the percentage of Black Caribbean origin children living in lone parent households is 63%. Now that drops all the way down to 6% for their Indian heritage peers. Now, if you don't think that that doesn't feed into why certain ethnic groups are more successful than others, especially when it comes to education and employment, then quite frankly, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the corporate world, and as you can imagine, the corporate world is quite a fervent supporter of establishing DEI policies. And when you go working on those, you can often find that people want to look at those data outputs, but specifically with regards to who is the most economically deprived. But then that's about as far as they go. They don't really want to look much further. It's just, right, okay, there's some economic deprivation going on over here, so let's just immediately, just looking at the raw group level data, decide to push things in that direction. And there's none of the that more intricate, nuanced approach that you've just explained, which is, right, let's get underneath the group status and go, what's going on within that group and all the various things that might be contributing to it. What, where's the beginning of that? Where's the mean? Where's the end of it? And have a more targeted approach. And clearly, policies will never be successful unless you can actually target it to the place that they're most needed. I wonder when. I feel like the Overton window on lots of the topics we talked about today has started to shift, where things can be it can have some critical analysis applied to them out in the open now. But the topics that you've just raised, like fatherlessness in certain ethnic minorities, and those and how that might impact outcomes, that doesn't quite seem to be there yet. What prospect do you see? Well, I suppose before we get into the prospect is, why do you think people don't want to breach that? And what prospect do you see of that happening? And how do you do it in a sensitive way so as not to trample over people's backgrounds ultimately? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's something I mentioned in the book, that I'm not interested in the stigmatization of single mothers. Actually, who I truly target in the book are feckless fathers who don't take responsibility for their own offspring. And I think that the point I'm making is that certain family models are more strongly associated with positive youth developments. And I think we need to be honest about the data that two-parent households spearheaded by a married couple is the family model most strongly associated with positive youth outcomes surrounding level of school attainment, cognitive development, mental well-being, and then further down the line in life, labour market integration. Now, that's not to say that if you are born within such a family model that you are guaranteed to be a spectacular overachiever. You may well end up being a grand failure, because personal responsibility and individual initiative also comes into play. Now, indeed, someone from a very dysfunctional, broken family background can go on to achieve quite remarkable things. But what I'm also ultimately talking about is the powerfulness of particular associations. I think that's the key here. Now, I've never wanted to deliberately offend anyone, especially with the book, and I tried to be as sensitive as possible. But honesty is the key here. And as you say, John, which was very important, if you want to deliver effective policy making, you have to be very honest about what the data is telling you. That's vitally important. And because this is ultimately about the quality of governance overall. So I think the key thing is we have these conversations in good faith, not to be deliberately offensive and provocative, but be ultimately of the view that we need to make sure that the data guides us towards effective and well-targeted policy making.
Yes, and that point you made earlier about how anyone can climb the ladder in theory, in practice, it isn't always the case that it's the same level of probability that's going to happen. And Rob Henderson, someone who's come to prominence of late, very popular Substack, and he's spent lots of time writing, doing speeches on what he calls the luxury belief class and getting into human psychology. He's someone who was brought up in foster care in the United States, and he joined the military. Then he left the military as a veteran, then went to Yale and then Cambridge, PhD. And he on one of his recent posts, he was writing about the likelihood of someone like him even making it to do all of those things, to end up that credentialed. And it's something like only 6% of foster kids within the United States, and I'm sure it's probably not too dissimilar over here, make it there. But that's like, orders of magnitude lower than even being in a single parent household. But even that being in a single parent household is just way less of a chance than someone who's brought up in the types of families that you've talked about, which is what contributes most to good life outcomes and well-being and all of those things. And so you're absolutely right to say the devil's in the detail, and we need to be honest. We need to act in good faith, because if people really want the things, their good intentions, to map out into good outcomes, then it's really the only way.
Absolutely. And I think the question you asked me, John, is, well, why don't people talk about this enough? I think it's much easier politics to blame the system as opposed to encouraging people to take responsibility. I believe that when it comes to much of the politics we're seeing among the liberal left, what's very interesting that many people in the liberal left actually live conventionally socially conservative lifestyles. They were raised in traditional two-parent households. They went on to get married, have children within wedlock, yet then say, well, a variety of lifestyles are absolutely fine. You know, successful families come in a variety of shapes, forms and sizes, without actually being honest about which family models are most strongly related to positive youth development. And I think they're hypocrites for doing that, actually, because what they're doing is promoting lifestyles that they would never promote in their own personal lives. And I think that's a crying shame.